Okay, so all right. So I wanted to just go over a couple of house rules before we begin. So, want to let you know that you are welcome here exactly as you are. I know some people have their cameras on, some people have theirs off, and that's totally fine. Whether you're joining live or watching this on the replay, it's entirely up to you. There will be no expectation for you to speak, share, or participate because I know not everyone has, that level of the same level of comfort. Everything that I ask or offer is an invitation only. So you can listen, reflect, and move at your own pace. Um, Before we begin, I guess it's also important for me to, hold on, someone's joining. Okay. So before we begin, I want to make sure that you also get to know who I am and why I'm doing this. So I want to show you. Okay. So my name is Ellen Villar. I'm a certified coach for people who have experienced profound loss, but are starting to still, realize and desire that they want to start building a fulfilling life full of purpose and meaning again, while honoring their loved ones. So first of all, I want to say I'm so sorry that you have to join this workshop. But I am very honored that you're here. I remember how early on, when I was very, very, very consumed by grief, especially when it was very fresh, just how much energy it took to do something new, to try something new. Um, so the fact that you guys are here speaks volumes to your capacity and your resilience. I just wanted to take, a second to acknowledge that. Take note, I don't like using the word strong in this context because I honestly hate using the word strong when it comes to grief in this aspect of my life because I believe that, we are allowed to be weak sometimes, or not even weak, just we are allowed to ask for support. And grief is one of those, really awful things, probably the most awful thing that we have to go through in our life. So like I asked my dad because he was saying this to me. He's like, don't be sad or don't cry. But I'm like, I just lost my husband. I just lost the love of my life. Like when else am I supposed to cry? When else am I supposed to ask for help? So yeah, again, I do not like using the word strong. I like using the word brave because, strong means that, you already know how to handle this. Brave, we don't know how to handle this. We don't know what is going on when we first are thrust into this new life. So the only thing that you can do when this happens to you is just put one foot in front of the other. Sometimes it's just taking it 1 second at a time and just, surviving. But what I want to show you too, eventually, hopefully with today and tomorrow's session is that grief doesn't always just have to be about surviving. And there is still life that you can have after grief. Okay, so a quick background on myself and my grief journey. I became a widow in February 2023 when my husband Ira, you can see him in the here, died by suicide. At that point, we were college sweethearts. We met first year college. So I was 37 when it happened, but we at that point we had already been together for almost 20 years. Um, Sorry, still admitting people. And at that point, married for about 9 years. He in 2018, he had first attempted to take his life. This was the first like out of nowhere, when we were still in Manila, Philippines, where for the first time when that happened, we brought him to the hospital because we were able to intercept, but he got his first, that was when he was first diagnosed with bipolar 1. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar, but bipolar 1 is basically you have these really big mood swings from manic to depression, sometimes both, where you have a lot of energy, but you're also very depressed. And that makes it a really dangerous combination because you're very sad, but you have the actual energy to do something about it. Um, Anyway, so we started his healing journey and his whole process of starting to really just live with this diagnosis. So part of that decision was he said he wanted to move to the US. So within a few months, so this happened in February. By December, we had sold everything we had. We sold our house, we sold our car, we sold everything and just came to the US with, I think it was four medium-sized suitcases. So, we started from scratch and, over here in the West Coast, I'm in New York. We were really the only ones here because none of our family was around. Um, so from 2018 until he died, he continued to really struggle with his mental health. And like I said, it was just the him and me in this region. So what happened was, at that time I wasn't aware of it, but I ended up developing severe clinical depression and PTSD because of, the constant threat of, him suddenly being manic and, me always having to be hyper vigilant and watching and all of that. So in late 2022, I made the most difficult decision of my life. And I told him that I needed a divorce or that I wouldn't survive our marriage because at that point, I was already thinking of, also harming myself. So we were going through that separation, but remained friends throughout because, we were always the best of friends. So we even talked almost daily, even though we were separated. And that December, we even went home to Manila together to tell our friends and our families together because we wanted to let them know we're still friends. It was just the marriage that was ending. Um, we came back to New York as friends. But one day I saw a cryptic post on Facebook. Um, and I just knew my life wouldn't be the same, would never be the same. When I saw the post, I don't know how, I don't know why, but like it was very cryptic. It didn't really say anything specific, but like I just knew. Um, Anyways, I'm not gonna go into the full story, but what I'm trying to say is if you're dealing with any of those feelings like guilt, regret, all the should've, would've, could've's, is you are not alone. I understand because I've felt and still sometimes feel all those things too. But what I want to say is that regardless of our circumstances, all those feelings, these are very common themes around grief. So part of why I wanted to do this workshop is also to be able to openly talk about these difficult topics because we don't always have these safe spaces where we can talk about these things openly without being judged or the fear of being judged. So before we move on, I'm gonna put up an anonymous poll. Let me see. This will be my first time doing this, so forgive me. But I want to put up an anonymous poll, and I'd like you to just select if any of these feelings have come up for you so far in your grief. Uh, so you should be seeing it now. I'll give everyone a few seconds. I think I think everyone has been able to put their answers in. Just want to make sure that I don't lose these results. Okay, I'm going to share. Oh, great. I can share the results. So, are you all seeing that? Okay. So as you can see, even though there are feelings in here that, we don't really talk about out loud, you're not alone. I have felt every single one of these things, every single one of these throughout my journey. So, you're not alone. And if there is anything that I want you to take away from today's session, it's just that, is that no matter how alone you feel sometimes in your feelings, no matter how abnormal you think your feelings are, they're not. The people who will really, really understand, unfortunately, are the ones who've also lost people. So if you haven't yet, and if you're able to, I highly suggest, that's one of the first things that you can do if you need support. Just look for community, look for someone who understands. Because as you can see, I'm going to take this down now. Um, As you can see, there are a lot of feelings that are common across those who have lost loved ones. It doesn't matter how they've lost, how long they've been together. Um, again, very common feelings across grief. So yeah, so for the next 2 days, I want to be able to provide you a space where you're allowed to feel all that grief and all of those feelings without judgment. No matter what your relationship was like before they passed, no matter how long it's been, I wanted to actually show you something. I also hope this is gonna the sound will transfer. So, just a brief background. David Kessler is a grief influencer, a grief expert. He lost his mother, but also a few years ago, he had also lo lost his son to, I think, an overdose. And then after that, he established grief.com. He runs grief support groups online. And he also has like this course that you can take that kind of gives you a step-by-step of how to work through your grief. But this is just a video of him answering a question that honestly is such a ridiculous question, but I'm going to play it for you.
You know, when people say, how long is my wife going to grieve? How long is my husband going to grieve? How long is my sister going to grieve? I always go, how long is the person going to be dead? Because if they're going to be dead a long time, you're going to grieve them a long time. It doesn't mean you'll always grieve with pain. You know, hopefully in time, you can grieve with love.
So yeah, um, first of all, I want to say, I mean, not really bad news, but there is no end to grief. You are never going to get over it. You are never going to forget it because like, how can you forget someone that you loved? How can you forget someone who has taken up space in your heart, right? So first thing that I want you to think is, this is not something to get over. This is not something to remove from your life, but rather this is something that we can eventually learn to integrate, and learn how to live despite this kind of pain that or sadness that can sometimes come up as, we integrate grief into our lives. So, before we move on, I also want to do another poll. I'm really liking these polls right now. So, um, and all these posts are anonymous, so don't worry about that. All right, I'm gonna launch a new one. So just curious, how long has it been since your person died? I want to know. Here we have some 6 months or less, 1 year or less, 1 to 2 years. Okay. For me, it's been about a little over 2 years. I think everyone's done. Right. So it's about 6 months or less, a year, 2 years. Okay. So basically what I wanted to do with that is, there are some of you that have been, dealing with this for, a little shorter, a little longer, but whether it's been 6 months or 6 years, how you're feeling right now, if it's stuck, lost, confused, all of that is totally normal. Grief has no timeline, and you're going to learn that. Grief has no timeline. And you will learn a little about that today. So again, I will just keep repeating this. If you were to just take one thing from this workshop, I want you to leave with the knowledge that you are not alone. We are here with you. I'm here with you. The people on this call are here with you. Um, and we're in this together. Okay.
You know, when people
All right. So I was supposed to pull that, sorry. Um, so I was hyper independent at first. And I was stubborn enough in the beginning to think that I could outstudy this thing. I don't know how about you guys, but this is how I attack things that I don't understand. I read all the books. I tried to DIY my grief. So I read all the books, watched all the YouTube videos, all of that, followed all the vlogs. But what I realized, like the longer I tried to do it, is that grief is really not meant to be handled alone. If at all, it's one thing that eventually all people will have to experience at one point or another in their lives. If you open your heart to love, you're also opening up your heart to grief. That is just the price that we pay for giving our love to someone. And that's also the price that our loved ones pay. Or like, yeah, when they choose to love us in return. So I believe that if at all, grief really should be something that brings people together, especially the people that they've left behind. It should really be something that brings people together. Unfortunately, it doesn't always happen. And, sometimes this is why I believe that grief education is very important. And this is why I do the work that I do. Is because sometimes, often enough, when we're in that depth of sadness and pain and suffering, we tend to turn inwards instead of reaching out for support. When that is really sometimes like the first thing that we need. Sometimes the people around us, they don't know what to say. They may even say the wrong things, or sometimes they even turn away from us. I don't know if it's happened to you, but some of the people that I thought were going to be there for me during the earliest, even now, some of the people that I thought were going to be there for me suddenly disappeared, or they send a few condolences, but after 6 months, I stopped hearing from them. Or we tried to hang out a few times. Maybe I was too sad the few times we hung out, so eventually they also stopped inviting me. Um, but yeah, like in the beginning, it made like you're already so lonely, and it makes you even lonelier when no one knows how to handle your grief, or no one knows how to just sit with you. But that's the thing, is that that's the thing that I really want to teach people, is that you don't need to know what to say. Sometimes all you need to do is just sit there with them as they're feeling these really, really difficult feelings. Because sometimes that's all it takes. It's to just make you feel less alone. So finally, when I was about ready to give up in that, again, DIYing my grief journey, I found a podcast about widowhood called, I think it was called Widow We Do Now. It's hosted by these two young women who had lost their husbands early on. I think they were in their early 30s. Um, but yeah, basically that changed the trajectory of my journey. In that podcast, they had a Facebook group which you can also join. It's called Widow We Do Now. And in that Facebook group, they mentioned this thing called Camp Widow, um, which back then sounded really weird to me. But basically, back then it was a 3-day retreat. It was in San Diego, but I think it was when I joined, it was about 500 something widows and widowers coming together. Some of them brought their kids, some of them brought their chapter twos or their like new partners. But basically, it was just a really, really beautiful space where we could all get together. We could cry, we could be angry, we could laugh and not, fear being judged because everyone around us understood. So again, community is so important. Um, I continued my therapy because I was of course seeing a psychiatrist at that point and a psychologist. I was doing talk therapy, I was doing medicine, but then I also now added grief support to the mix. It took a lot of support from friends and professionals. And in the end, what really jump-started my healing was, me taking control of my mindset and channeling it towards a new vision. And then I just started working on making it happen. And it might be hard to imagine right now, especially if you're, 6 months out or less and you're so fresh in it. But if I could also just say and like offer you some glimpse of hope, I'm happy to report that, I'm now living a life full of purpose, of joy. There is still sadness sometimes, of course, because again, you never forget that grief. But I wake up fulfilled because now I found my purpose. His dying didn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It didn't have a reason, doesn't need a reason. But what I've chosen to do now, being in a situation where you don't really get a choice, because when it happens, you don't get a choice, right? But what you get to choose though is what you do with it after. And for me, um, you know, I've chosen to do this kind of work is to help other people who don't know where to start, just, figure out how to actually deal with this thing. So, I now use mindset shifting and a lot of other tools like reality testing and, rule book coaching to really just help fellow widows and widowers and people who have experienced profound loss do the same. This is not something that you have to do. This is something I chose to do for myself. But know that if something that you want to do is that, there is a way to do it, or there is a way to learn it. So today we're going to be talking about what grief does to us. So physically, emotionally, mentally. We're also going to be addressing wait, hold on. Before we continue that, I wanted to do just an icebreaker. So this one, I'm not going to do a poll, but then, on Zoom, you have a react button on the lower part of your screen. So if you click that, you can just click thumbs up if you've ever felt any of these things that are going to come up. Okay. So first is emotional turbulence. Who has felt this? Who has felt a roller coaster of emotions happening in all in 1 second? You're like, you're watching something funny. You're laughing, suddenly you're crying because you can't send it to them. Suddenly you want to share something with them and you remember you can't. Seeing a lot of thumbs up. Next, exhaustion or sleep deprivation. Or sometimes you sleep so much, you wake up, you're still exhausted for some reason. You don't feel rested. You take naps, doesn't help. See a lot of clapping and thumbs up too. How about this? Surrealness or disassociation. I remember the first 6 months at least, or at least the first year, waking up every day thinking, well, number one, hating it because I was like, shoot, I have to now re-accept and, remember again that this thing happened. But also, it was that feeling of, this isn't my life. Like, this is someone else's life. Someone bring me back to the universe that I'm supposed to be in because this is not, no. So that is surrealness, that is disassociation. And I felt that so much very early on. I saw a lot of thumbs up over there too. Next is memory problems. Um, Not just remembering things, but also um, talking and then forgetting what you were saying in the middle of your sentence. Seeing a lot of thumbs up. You know, um, Starting to do something and then forgetting what you were doing in the middle of it, also memory problems. So my friends and I, my widow friends and I, we call this widow brain or widow fog, but basically it's a grief brain, right? So I'll explain a little bit of that a little more later. Let's do the last one. Distraction. So who here has leaned into distractions? Like, I talked the other day to someone who leans into biking. So he bikes like, a lot of miles a day to distract himself. There are people who, I think for me, it was, watching a lot of TV and movies because that's something that we used to share. So I like just drowned myself in that in the beginning. Feel free to put in the chat how the different ways you've been trying to distract yourself. Some of the unhealthier ways that I also try to distract myself was drinking. That happened a lot in the beginning. One of my really best friends went through that as well, and it took a lot of work before we were able to really just get her help, and it really just again started with feeling less alone. So today we're gonna be cleaning, lots of cleaning. Oh yes, oh my God, my apartment was so clean. So you know what? In the beginning, I think my apartment was so messy because of the depression. But I think one day I was just like, you know what? Today I'm just gonna clean. And then for like hours, that was all I did because it like cleared my mind. I wasn't thinking about the grief. So totally understand that. Watching TV, Daphne watches TV. Danielle said distraction was work. Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. So for me, same thing. Um, I don't know about in your jobs, but then for me, for my job, I remember my boss was saying, you get 3 days of bereavement leave. 3 days. Oh my God. So I was like, okay, so after 3 days, you expect me to come back and be over it. But in the beginning, I think, like I said, I'm very hyper independent. So that's also what I did. I drowned myself in work. I took on as many assignments as possible, worked as many hours as I could because it did distract me. However, I think it took about 4 months before it started all falling apart because I realized that it wasn't sustainable because I was pushing the grief back in my brain with, trying to stay busy. But at the end of the day, when I got home and everything was quiet, it's still there. And you're still dealing with it. You can't escape it. Danielle understands. We're very hyper independent. So yeah, so today we're going to talk a little bit about that. So just to give you like a brief overview, what we're going to be talking about today and tomorrow. So, I started with the introduction, and then we're going to talk about what grief does to us, physically, emotionally, mentally. We're also going to address the misconceptions about the grief journey and moving on. And we'll talk about the 5 stages of grief because I think that's really important. And plus, after that, I'll introduce a new way that you can look at grief. And of course, like some support too. And then tomorrow, we're going to be talking more about that first step and, trying to start that journey and rediscovering yourself. But, we'll talk about that more then. So, first thing, being lost and stuck. So, let's start with one basic fact. Okay. After loss, especially after losing a spouse or someone really close to you, it's entirely normal to feel lost or stuck. Imagine this. It's like someone kidnapped you, brought you to another planet without leaving any instructions, without, you don't know the language, you don't know if the other creatures are people too, you don't know how anything works, and you don't even know if or how you're going to survive in this new planet. In the beginning, grief consumes everything. Our brains actually perceive grief as a major threat, so it actually goes into survival mode. Our brain starts releasing cortisol, which is a stress hormone. And what that does is your body diverts the flow from your brain to your limbs into your heart because you're kind of in panic mode. So, the fight, flight, or freeze, you're basically like getting ready to do any of that. And how we react is different from person to person. Some people fight, some people flee, which like they go and travel and escape, or some freeze and just, are just so paralyzed by their grief. But yeah, so basically what your body does is it diverts the blood flow from your brain to your lips into your heart. And that's why we start getting these memory problems, those memory gaps, or like that, like static when you're trying to remember something. So this is why, you forget to eat, you forget what you're saying mid-sentence, as for me, I remember early on, I didn't eat that first week at all. Like I could barely keep anything down. My friends kept bringing me food. I could barely eat any of it. I would eat one bite or two and be like, I'm done. I can't do this. And I was trying to look for the silver lining. So I was thinking, hey, at least I'll lose some weight because I wasn't eating. But lo and behold, like I weighed myself a week after and I gained 10 pounds. And I was like, where did this come from? So the Germans kind of have this word. It's called Kummerspeck, which is like people on the internet say that it means grief bacon, but I looked a little bit more into it, and what it really is more translated to is worry fat. But basically, it's like the weight that we gain when we overeat when we're stressed. But I feel like that can also be applicable to the weight that you gain even when you don't eat. Because the thing is, like I said, stress generates cortisol. And cortisol retains body fat for survival in a crisis. So that's based on science. In my upcoming, so I'm doing this 8-week program called Next Chapter, but in that program, I dive into the science of how the human body reacts to extreme stress caused by grief, and all the weird things that happen to us in our brains. Grief can also make routines disappear. So the idea of getting back to how you were before all of this happened, or even just starting new, it can feel nearly impossible. Like you don't have the energy, you don't even know if your brain can take it. So if you've ever wondered in this journey of yours, why can't I just move on? Or even what's wrong with me? I promise you do not have to move on. Like I said earlier, you do not have to move on. And there is nothing wrong with you. Feeling uncertain, feeling slow, or unmotivated, that is not a sign of failure. It's just a part of the landscape of grief. It's just how people operate in this new planet. Okay. But the fact that you're here, that you're watching this, either you're here live with me right now, or watching this on replay, that means that there is a way forward. Okay. You don't have to feel ready because, after all, nobody's ever really ready to lose someone that they love, yet we persevere, right? Um, I want to take a second to acknowledge this because I want you to know that you're already braver than you think. I know that, even if you lost your loved one to maybe, a long sickness, or if it was sudden, however it happened, no one is ever ready. Even if you've ever felt anticipatory grief, which is the grief that you feel when, again, it's like someone who's been sick for a long time, you know that it's eventually getting there. It's never the same. You cannot ever prepare yourself for something like this. There are no books that you can read to prepare yourself for how you're actually going to react when it happens. So please, like no matter how you've reacted, I implore you to please give yourself that kind of grace and kindness, and understand that when we are thrust into things like this, we don't know what to do. All right, so it's okay to ask for support. It's okay to ask questions. I'll show you later different ways that you can do that, either with me or with other people. Connect to people. I'll show you other ways later. Okay, so reframing your journey. So I want to talk about this term that people use, which is moving on. I'm going to read a few lines, and again, use the raise hand function or react however you want to react if you've ever heard any of these things, okay? First, at least you're still young. You can find someone again. I heard that. I've heard that. That was said to me, I think, like 2 weeks, 2 weeks after it happened. Okay. Um, so someone has heard that. What about at least you had a lot of good years together, or at least they've lived a long life, or they've lived a rich life. I've also heard that, because Ira was, we had been together for 20 years and he was always so full of life. So everyone's like, at least this, at least that. Um, Next, you've been so sad for too long. Shouldn't you be over it by now? Me having been, a couple years out, have heard this. Someone has heard this too. What about, it's been long enough. When are you going to move on? When are you going to get over it? Ooh, or this one. Aren't you just milking it by now? Or I've heard this said about other friends before I went through this. It's like, aren't they milking it? Like it's been so long. It's time to move on. The thing is, people say these things and first it makes me angry because the at least that minimizes your loss, and that is not something that's cool to do. Your loss is huge. It blew up your life. So by saying at least, like it minimizes the impact of that a little bit. Um, but yeah, basically like I said, there is no timeline to grief. You will grieve them for as long as they're gone, and that's gonna be forever. Um, but yeah, before your loved one died, you only knew one way to live your life, and it was with them in it, right? So one day, suddenly you wake up and they're gone. It's as if someone had cut your leg off in the middle of the night. Whether it was a pre-scheduled surgery, so you knew it was going to happen, whether you knew your leg was going to cut off, or you lost your leg suddenly because of an accident, or whatever, you just lost your leg. How do you move on from losing a limb? Right? Do you just forget that you once had two legs and just hop around like everything's normal? You're just like, oh, this is just how it's always been. Or do people tell you, oh, at least you still have the one leg? right? Or you've had a lot of good years walking around with two legs. You should be thankful for that. Doesn't that sound so ridiculous? Or it's been 2 years since you lost your leg. Shouldn't you be over it by now? Doesn't it sound so crazy when you put it that way? So that's why I personally hate the term moving on. Because for me, when you say moving on, it really sounds like you're trying to forget something or leave something behind. And that just doesn't work for me because how can I ever forget him, right? How can I forget this person that has, impacted my life? How can I forget them when who am I today is forever shaped by the time that we had together? No matter how it ended, it still doesn't negate all those years we had together, right? All those years we spent together. So you may never ever get your, in the same following that same analogy, you may never ever get your leg back, but you know what? You can actually learn to adapt. You can use crutches, strengthen your muscles, change the way you live your life, to adjust to this new thing that you never asked. People do this every day. And, some of them even, again, following the leg analogy, some people even go on to become Paralympians or motivational speakers. But, you don't, again, don't have to do any of that. Sometimes you just want to adapt to living life with one less limb. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This is a reset after all. So, okay, going back. So instead of moving on, what I really like to say is that I'm moving forward instead. So, before I took that first step in moving forward, I had to do a lot of reframing because I kept wanting to hold on to that pain and suffering. And I don't know if you felt this way, but I felt that like the suffering and the crying and the pain, it was really just a testament of my love for him. But the thing is, the longer that, I went through this, I started realizing that, I know him. He wouldn't want me to suffer. Of course, like I had every right to suffer, but the longer that, the more time had passed, I realized that he wouldn't want this for me. And, I'm not a religious person, but I've really become a spiritual one throughout this journey. And for me, like the chance of there being an after, um, is pretty much 50-50. It's either there is or there isn't, right? And for me, those are pretty good odds, I think. So for me, if there is a something after, I want him to at least see that I'm moving forward and making something of my life. In that after, what I want is I want him to not feel bad because, he had to make this really difficult choice for himself. Um, I want him to not feel bad that I just, end up just sitting in the suffering and never doing anything again and just waiting until it was my time to go. I want to be able to meet him at the end of my life, armed with loads of amazing stories of like, look at what I've done. Look at all the people that I've helped. And this was all because I chose to make meaning out of this senseless thing that happened. Um, So I want to say that the power that we have in something like this, in what feels like a powerless circumstance, is that we get to choose how we move forward, um, and what we create next. We get to look at the bricks that are left of this house that just imploded on us, and then we get to choose what to build with them. Maybe it's just, like a semblance of that same house that was there before. You just need shelter and you just need somewhere safe. That's fine. Um, but also maybe if you want to build something more. Okay, so before we go on, let me just go back a little bit. Have you guys heard of the 5 stages of grief? Um, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Yeah, okay. So some of you, if you haven't heard about it, so Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross has this 5 stages of grief, and basically she did this study with people dying of cancer. Um, but until now, a lot of people still wrongly believe that these stages are linear. So, it's denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. However, depending on how far you are in your grief journey, excuse my language, but you know that this is bullshit. The grief is not linear. You can be bargaining 1 second, depressed the next second, resigned or acceptance 1 second. Like it's all jumbled and it like activates at different times. So, first thing is I feel like acceptance should be more, like I said, resignation, because even now I refuse to accept, but I have resigned myself to the fact that what has happened, and that there is no going back. So now it's just that it's resignation. It's like, okay, fine, it happened, and I can't do anything about it. But I guess what I have to do now is figure out what's next. Um, but yeah, it's grief is not linear. I want to say that right now. And it is very dangerous to think that it's linear because it puts so much pressure on grievers like us to move on to the next stage if we haven't, right? So if people see you and you're angry, they'll be like, it's been 2 years, why are you still angry about it? So the truth is these stages are more of phases that can overlap. So, we move back and forth between them. Sometimes we feel one more intensely. Just make sure that I am, all right. But yeah, so basically, I want you can expect to feel these phases in varying intensities throughout your journey. Even though those who have done a lot of work can attest that they still get hit by these phases from time to time. So, it's like basically bouncing around like a pinball machine, and then you have a lot of balls going around at once. So it's like hitting all those things, right? I actually dive into it a lot more in my next chapter program, but I did say I was going to introduce a new thing to you. And these are Warden's 4 tasks of mourning, which I feel like it's more helpful to inform grievers about this than the 5 stages of grief. So, it's, accepting the reality of the loss, processing the pain of the grief, adjusting to a world without them, and then finding a way to remember them while embarking on the journey of the rest of your life. So again, with time and enough instruction, and I can send this to you after this session, but with time and enough instruction, it is possible to learn these techniques that allow you to process your emotions when they hit and be able to, find a healthy way to be able to handle them. Sorry, I think I'm blocking them. Okay. So I know it's easy to feel alone when you're going through something like this. Um, like I have felt alone in the past 24 hours. And like I said, I'm happy, but still, again, these feelings do come up. So, like you can see, the good news is we can be alone together, right? You don't have to be like we can be alone together. The people who are in this call are alone with you. I think my in my the other means of support that I tried, my therapist, my doctor who prescribed my antidepressants, those retreats, I really don't think I could have gotten this far, if not for my fellow grievers. It really was being able to talk to them and be like, hey guys, like just having even just a chat group and being like, this is going on for me today. Have any of you ever gone through this? And just having someone go, oh yeah, that's totally normal. Like that helped. The ones that, I've met online, they share stories. Like all of these people have made me feel less alone. Because every time I thought I was doing something wrong, yeah, again, I'd ask them and they'd be like, yeah, that's fine. That happens to everyone. That happens to me. That happened to us. So if you can find a local support group or even just start having those difficult conversations with your families or friends. Disclaimer. Unfortunately, sometimes it's going to be up to us to educate them on how to support us. Because not everyone, like I said, a lot of people will not know how to do it. But yeah, it includes teaching them how to have these difficult conversations. Sometimes you can just say to your best friend, hey, I just need to sit here and listen. Maybe hold my hand as I cry. Just listen to me on the phone and let me just cry or feel these feelings. Sometimes it's just important to have someone with you when you're going through the worst of it. But also, if you're not at the stage where you can face people yet, that's totally okay. The internet can also be a good resource. So, if you prefer Instagram, there are a lot of authors like Megan Devine, The Grief Project. There are a lot of out there with different messages around grief. So I encourage you to like look around, see someone whose message or whose tone or like style that you like. because that also helps. Yeah, sorry, here. I wanted to pull this up. So on Facebook, there are also Facebook groups for pretty much every kind of grief imaginable. So for people who've lost their partners to cancer, even specific kinds of cancer. For me, one of my favorites is the Brave Ladies Club. It's a Facebook group for widows of suicide because suicide comes with this like very unique set of challenges too. Um, if you're on Reddit, you'll also find subreddits dedicated to grief support, widowers, even suicide bereavement. And speaking of Reddit, I just wanted to share this one thing that I've always loved. I'll just read it quickly, but again, I will send this to you after this call because I know we're kind of going a little over because I wanted to make sure we have time for Q&As. But basically, it talks about I'll just read it if that's okay with you guys. So as for grief, you'll find it comes in waves. When the ship is first wrecked, you're drowning with the wreckage all around you. Everything floating around you reminds you of the beauty and the magnificence of the ship that was, so the person that we lost and is no more. And all you can do is float. You can find some piece of the wreckage and you hang on to it for a while. Maybe it's a physical thing, something they own. Maybe it's a happy memory or a photograph. Maybe it's a person who is also floating, so a fellow griever. So for a while, all you can do is float and stay alive. In the beginning, the waves are 100 feet tall and they crash over you without mercy. They come 10 seconds apart, sometimes even less, and they don't even give you time to catch your breath. All you can do is hang and float and survive. After a while, maybe weeks, maybe months, you'll find that the waves are still 100 feet tall, but now they come further apart. And when they come, they still crash all over you and wipe you out. But in between, you can breathe and you can function. You never know what's going to trigger the grief. It might be a song, a picture, a street intersection, or the smell of a cup of coffee. It can just be about anything. And the wave comes crashing. But in between waves, there is life. So I'm not going to finish it, but basically he says, as you open yourself up to love, you're really going to be opening yourself up to grief because that is just something that love, you can't get one without the other. They're always going to come hand in hand. There's always that risk. But the waves will come and you'll survive them too. And if you're lucky, you'll have lots of scars from lots of love and lots of shipwrecks. So, you don't have to comment. You can even just read, but you'll see that a lot of people, again, are feeling same feelings and the thoughts that you're having. So before we start the Q&A, I just wanted to ask if you can put in the chat, like what has been your biggest takeaway from today's session? I'll give you a few seconds. And as you're doing that, um, I just want to end this portion by reassuring you that wherever you are right now in your journey is exactly where you're meant to be. Okay? Give yourself grace and kindness as you grieve, because after all, this is probably the most hardest thing that you're ever going to go through in your life. And but that's the thing, the only way really through grief is through. There's no pushing it away because it's just gonna keep roaring back. If you say I'll deal with it eventually, or maybe time will just let me forget. The thing is, time time heals wounds, but time alone does not heal wounds. It's what you do with the time that determines how you heal. And when you accept that, when you accept the fact that you still have all of this love and you can't express it in the way that you've always known how, is that you really just need to learn the new ways to express that love. So, maybe it's an extra 5 minutes in the morning where you just, think about them or you talk out loud to them. For me, it's lighting a candle by this little altar that I made in my house. Every time I miss him, I light a candle. Or you can make someone else's day better because it's something they would have done. So these are all still expressions of your everlasting love for this person. And love is I'm going to share this more, but there's a quote from Interstellar that says love is the one thing that we can perceive that transcends space, time, and dimensions. Okay, so no matter what you do, there's no right or wrong speed in this path. What's important is just, you just take one step at a time. Okay, so I'm going to stop recording now. Yes, grief does not have a specific timeline, 100%. We are grieving with love, not grieving in pain. Yes. So, the pain sometimes it's just a byproduct. But I think, once you start really just embodying that, whenever you feel this pain, it is also a testament to your love, then it just makes that pain a little easier to bear. Not going to be easy, just easier. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording right now and then we're going to do our Q&A.